I'm joined now by candidate for the U.S. Senate in Maine, Jordan Wood. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Brian.
So, Jordan, you're running for the U.S. Senate in Maine. Obviously, Susan Collins has been in that seat for quite a long time, and she has been a difficult incumbent to unseat. But what does the polling say right now that might pose something of an unprecedented, at least as it relates to Susan Collins, risk for her?
Yeah, she's the most vulnerable Republican up for election right now. And a recent poll had just 21% of Mainers thought that she deserved another term. 21%. So she's the most unpopular she's ever been going into a reelection. And she's the only senator up in a state that Harris won in so it's the only swing seat. And it's her best opportunity to flip a Senate seat.
And look, she has been in office for a long time. She's a difficult incumbent to unseat. And so why will your race in particular be different?
Yeah. So, I was in second grade when Susan Collins was first elected in 1996. That's also when I was in elementary school, the last time she had a town hall. She has failed to be responsive and engaged with the people of Maine. And I think they're finally ready for a change. I also think my candidacy, my campaign provides a real contrast to Susan Collins, not just my age, but I've never had elected office before, but I have a background in fighting political corruption. I worked with End Citizens United, Democracy First. So I going to make this campaign really grounded in a change of our political system and corruption and the need for a change. And I think it'll be a different campaign. But I'm also, to the town hall question that she hasn't had these in 25 years. And I launched this campaign. I said, we're going to have one in every county by the end of the year. So I think that this campaign is going to be going into every community around our state, meeting as many voters as possible, and earning their vote and their trust to serve and represent them in Washington. And so that's how I think we're going to win.
Susan Collins is kind of become a joke unto itself. The fact that she expressed the most you can get out of her, even amid the most egregious violations or abuses by Donald Trump, is that Susan Collins is concerned. And so in this moment where we do need folks who are willing to stand up and serve as a bulwark, even in the Republican Party, against the excesses of this administration, the fact that all we can get from Susan Collins is some concern, again, has kind of become a joke unto itself. And so How do you contrast what you're looking to do with what Susan Collins is doing, which is just, the scale of concern that we see from her, depending on, the most egregious violation, which is that we'll just hear that she's very concerned, versus, a more minor infraction, which is that we have somewhat concern, or whatever it may be.
Yeah. And, when we launched this campaign, the slogan that we launched with was, this is a time for courage, not concern. And I think that, people in Maine are just fed up with sort of holding out this hope that she would do the right thing, that she would have the courage to stand up for our democracy, the rule of law. But we haven't seen it from her. And so this idea of courage, and I think, is what this moment of crisis for our country demands. And we're not seeing from her. And it follows a tradition I really think we have in Maine. And most recently, we saw from our governor and the way she stood up to Donald Trump in the White House when he was trying to bully our state. But we have, we're coming up on the 75th anniversary of Margaret Chase Smith's speech on the Senate floor against her own party and Joe McCarthy, and helping to give clarity about the extremism that was doing to our politics. But we have a rich tradition in our state of that type of leadership and courage. We have not seen it from Susan Collins, not just in the past 8 years, but in the past 30 years that she's been there. So that's the type of leadership that I think Maine needs, and that I hope to serve the state with.
You had mentioned Governor Mills, and of course she opted to, push back against Trump when he stood in the White House, where, she was on his home field, surrounded by all of the other governors, and basically challenged her, to which she opted not to capitulate, which we've seen so many institutions do, so many law firms do, universities, tech billionaires, media outlets. She decided to stand on business and push back and say that she'll see him in court, and she did, and she won. And so what do you make of the fact that, we do have some folks who are willing to stand up, like the governor of your state, even in the face of so much capitulation by all of these other entities?
Yeah, I think when that happened, when Governor Mills stood up, and for the rule of law and what was right. I'm a gay man. I'm married with a child. We had our first child in January, and I really felt she stood up for families like ours. But Mainers, we also feel like that's what we expect from our governor. That's what we expect from the leaders that we send to Washington. And I hope that other leaders around the country and other states and in Congress see her example as what we need in this moment. And it's not about liberal, conservative, are you what party you are. It is standing up for what's right, and Mainers support her for that. I mean, I saw a poll recently in the Bangor Daily News that was asking about the issue of trans people in high school sports, on where you stood on it. And it was, 70-30 supported seemingly, the policy of restricting it. But it also asked the question, like, do you support Governor Mills standing up to the Trump administration? And 70% supported her. And it's like the issue may pull over here, but people also have just no patience for the idea that Donald Trump gets to tell the Maine Principals Association who's playing in our high school sports, right?
And that's what I want to dig into a little bit here, because the way that I've thought about this as we head toward 26 and 28 and beyond is that the way that we used to see, and I'm sure we still do to some extent, but infighting within the Democratic Party is depending on where you lie on the political spectrum. Are you progressive? Are you moderate? And I think that the litmus test moving forward is not going to be whether you are ideologically progressive or moderate, but rather whether you're willing to actually fight or not. And we have seen, at least for the last, decade that I've been doing political media, a Democratic Party that is largely not just impotent, not just feckless, but especially feckless in the eyes of a Republican Party that has shown us over and over and over that they are willing to go to the mat for whatever they want to do, however big or small it may be, however hypocritical they may seem. I mean, we saw it to some degree with the Supreme Court justices. Merrick Garland didn't get a hearing because, God forbid, we have a hearing when, during the year that there's an election. Meanwhile, you have Amy Coney Barrett getting voted to be confirmed onto the Supreme Court while votes are being cast. So if we're going to allow these Republicans goodwill because we think it's going to be reciprocated, it's a fool's errand. And there is this sense that, for those of us on the outside, that the Democratic Party is largely like Charlie Brown and as Lucy pulls the football away over and over and over again. And so how does that factor into your thinking as you're running this campaign, this idea of fighters versus non-fighters?
I think you are exactly right on this question of like what's separating our political leaders right now. And there's been sort of a recent back and forth with Alyssa Slotkin, sort of what she thinks we need to do in AOC. Both of them are fighters, though, right? And that's what matters. Is they're saying, Alyssa calls it like alpha energy. And it's like, yeah, that's what people want, is like to go and confront this threat and stand up for what is right. And so I think that is absolutely what people are looking for, but what will separate the leaders in this time. And so like that's really what we're doing in this campaign and what I think this moment demands of us. And in terms of how Democrats win and how do we, we're coming off of this election loss. One of the most startling statistics for me after this election was that Democrats had lost households with an income below $50,000. And I said, that the party that I joined when I was in high school and organized and knocked doors for, like, that was a party committed to lifting people up out of poverty, to giving people the freedom and opportunity to pursue the future that they wanted. And the fact that we have strayed from that so much is a real indictment of the leadership of our party in the past. So I think we don't have a messaging problem. I don't think we have a policy agenda problem. We've got a deliverable problem. Is that we have a childcare crisis in this country. We have a housing crisis. We have healthcare costs that continue to skyrocket. These are the same issues that existed in this country and have gotten worse since I was growing up. and Susan was first elected to the Senate, they've only gotten worse, and Democrats haven't delivered for people on these issues. And that's what we have to do. And we have to go to Washington willing to go and fight for those things. And that's how we'll earn back people's trust that we're the party fighting for working families, because we deliver for them. So that's what this campaign's about and what we're going to do. And I just think you're exactly right on that, Brian.
In terms of what your North Star is as it relates to policy, like why are you running this race? What drives you? What are the issues that move you?
Yeah. I was at the Capitol on January 6th. I was the chief of staff at that time for Katie Porter. And we spent that day.
that could have gone multiple different ways. When you started off by saying I was at the Capitol on January 6th, this is a.
My husband says that all the time as a staffer, not for any other reason. But we spent the day barricaded in the office with AOC and AOC's chief too, and that experience really gave me firsthand like how fragile our democracy is and how reliant it is on people to follow simple, nonpartisan rules to have free and fair elections, and how dangerous it is, even when a small group of anti-democracy extremists, how much they can threaten that system. Yeah. And so democracy is the number one issue, because we've got to protect this. It's not working great right now. It needs to be reformed, but it is the best thing for us to deliver on the problems that people face in their day-to-day lives. But I say, so protect democracy, but then we've got to go reform our democracy. And to your question about fighting and not, like, it was so painful for me to see Democrats, Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema, stop because they wanted to protect the filibuster. HR 1 for the People Act, sweeping democracy, anti-corruption reform. Like we were that close, and it failed because they wouldn't fight the filibuster, an arcane institution and procedural. So I think the first thing we've got to do is democracy reform. We've got to end partisan gerrymandering. We've got to restore the right to vote for all eligible citizens. And we have got to end the political corruption in Washington that has given the wealthy, well-connected, and corporations so much power over our system. So those are the driving issues for me. But I believe that we've got to address the cost of living. But this corruption issue is what's holding us back from really solving the cost of healthcare, providing universal childcare, and these other issues. So I come at this from my experience fighting for democracy and Trump's assault on it, and my background fighting corruption. But also, I grew up in a family that lived mostly paycheck to paycheck growing up. And our childcare was my mom leaving the workforce. We needed health care. My mom's a teacher. My dad's a pastor. When we needed health care because the church couldn't afford it, my mom had to go back to work because that's how we could get health care coverage for our family. So I've lived through the struggles that we need to solve. And that experience, I think, is what gives me the drive and determination to go serve and help the people in my state and to win this election.
Jordan, how can folks who are watching, listening, help your campaign?
Yeah, you go to electjordan.com and chip in whatever you can. It's a grassroots campaign. We're not taking money from lobbyists or corporate PACs. And that's how we're going to have the resources we need to go have these town halls across the state and get our message out. So any support people can provide, electjordan.com would be just hugely helpful.
Well, Jordan Wood, I appreciate your time. Best of luck in the campaign trail.
Thanks, Brian.